our internet went down in our office here, Betty.
Oh,
So we are using a hotspot right now. And so thank you for your patience, Betty McCollum, and thank you everyone on this special lunch with the friends, this conversation with Congresswoman Betty McCollum for your patience here. And so we just have a limited amount of time until 12:30 here, and so I just a little bit of housekeeping for folks. If you want to use the chat function or the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen there, you can put questions in there and comments, and we can respond to those. And if you want to say where you're from, you can drop that in the chat, and you can drop a special memory of the Boundary Waters, drop that in there as well, and share that with everyone. So we are at a really incredible moment in time here where leadership on the environment and leadership on the Boundary Waters in particular is especially important. And we are very fortunate that Congresswoman Betty McCollum has been the leader on the Boundary Waters for many, many years here. She's the senior member of the Minnesota delegation and has been a champion for many issues. And we are so grateful to have her as our member of Congress for Minnesota here, for Ramsey County and St. Paul. And so, we're going to accelerate this a little bit. My introduction doesn't do justice to the positive impact that Congresswoman Betty McCollum has on the lives of Minnesotans here. And so, just as a kind of to kick this off, we are in a particular moment in time, Congresswoman Betty McCollum, and maybe you want to provide some context for how you, as a member of Congress, are dealing with the sort of chaos that is going on here, and how you approach your service to the people of Minnesota.
Well, we could talk about everything that's being impacted by the federal government, but take what I'm going to say about the environment and then multiply it all across all the agencies, all the secretariats that have responsibility for delivering service to the American people. So we've watched the EPA administrator, say that the EPA doesn't have a role in climate change. We've watched the EPA staff get slashed, over 60%. We're watching the dismantling today on the news about wanting to bring back coal as a source of energy, even though it doesn't make economic sense, and it sure doesn't make sense in an environmental way. So we're just, no regulation on chemicals into our waters, just everything, just one thing after another, cut, don't fund, cutting off research. And then you'd add the Forest Service, which is also in the Interior bill. And they're seeing their mission being cut as well, too, including going after some of the work that's done here in the Twin Cities, Fish and Wildlife, everybody. Now, so then let's talk about how this impacts, research, Forest Service, EPA, everything else. Well, the Boundary Waters is 20% of the purest water in our system, and it's in a forest system. So if the forest system isn't going to stand up for protecting water, then we're in big trouble. And when Trump says that mining's more important than water, we're in trouble with protecting those particular assets. And all of our public lands are in deep trouble with this administration. So I know today you wanted to focus on the Boundary Waters, and I could talk about what's happening with immigration and housing and just go on and on and on. But what's happening just in the agencies, the Forest Service and the EPA that I mentioned, that's happening all across the board. And so we're watching things be impacted. But when universities get their funding cut off to do research on, minerals and how we, what you'd even do in the case of some of these older mines collapsing, the gold mine that had all the water release in it. And we're not even doing research on how to prevent accidents from happening. So what we should be doing is stopping an accident from happening in the first place. And every single one of these copper sulfide ore mines have an accident, and it pollutes water. And so that's why one of the reasons why we have the Boundary Waters Wilderness Canoe area is to say that there's just some places where the water and the wilderness are just too pristine to take that risk on it. And I could get into the history of what happened during the last Trump administration. The Obama administration had put a moratorium on any mining in that area. Governor Dayton was also working on the same thing here, just because what happens, it's like, I'm sure people have seen pictures of it from your organization, but it's like, it's worse than a forest fire going through. It's like a nuclear bomb went off. When you look at the pictures from big explosive bombs, it's just, everything's destroyed. The water's destroyed, and it's destroyed not for 20 or 30 years, so you can go in and clean it up. It's destroyed forever. And so we had the protections put in by the Obama administration. Then Trump came along. Zinke was the chair of the Interior then, and they decided that they were going to let these mining leases go forward again. Talked them into doing a study. They started doing a study, and then lo and behold, when the study's almost completed, the Forest Service under the previous Trump administration wouldn't release the study to us and just said, well, we're done. We've got all the information we need. We can start mining there. It's no problem. And when I asked to see the study that we paid for as taxpayers, they actually sent it to me redacted. So a white pieces of paper with big black squares in it saying, information redacted. There's nothing secret. I'm on the Defense Committee. There's nothing secret about looking at a study that would predict what would happen to the water, the animals, the habitat, and everything in the Boundary Waters Canoe area should one of these mines leak. And the study also would point out they all leak.
Exactly. Congresswoman McCollum, you're been a champion for the Boundary Waters, the leading champion, and for the environment more broadly on climate issues, the Mississippi River. Where does that come from? What is there, like a personal connection that you have with the outdoors, or anything that kind of drives your passion?
I think a lot of us in Minnesota, because we're so in tune with the weather. Let's start with the weather. Weather affects your quality of life. Weather affects flooding, water. Weather affects whether you have good crops if you're a farmer, how plants are doing, how animals are surviving. So we're very attuned into talking about weather here. So I think from an early age, all of us in Minnesota know that weather's important and weather affects the environment. So that probably started out. I was a Girl Scout. My mother was a Girl Scout leader. I was a camp counselor for years, both Girl Scout camp and another camp that they don't really exist anymore, but Campfire Girls, and just spent a lot of time outdoors. And then when I got elected to office back in 1992, there was all kinds of studies going on. Willard Bunger was the chair of the Environment Committee about what was happening with frogs in water in southern Minnesota from herbicides and pesticides runoff. So I worked on that with Willard, and then wetlands preservation, finding out how the wetlands, all the water's interconnected underneath, even if you don't see it, and how water flows, and how in Minnesota flows north and it flows south, and sometimes one river like the Mississippi will flow both ways. And so just the more I picked up on science made me even appreciate more the beauty and the awesomeness of this. But now, as I've gotten older and working on this issue and been in Africa and in the Middle East and that, water is a resource that here in the United States we undervalue. We don't put a price tag on it. We put a price tag on copper, but we don't put a price tag on water. And you know what, folks? We can live without copper, but we can't live without water. So for no other reason than preserving this wonderful wilderness, we have an obligation and responsibility for future generations here in the United States to make sure that they have access to clean water. So working on the Mississippi River bill, working on the Boundary Waters and bills I work on throughout the United States, I've gotten a big focus on just making sure that we treat water with the dignity and respect it deserves, because it generates life on this planet.
It's exactly right. And we are the land of sky blue water here in Minnesota. And we need to recognize that not everyone has the good fortune to be around so much clean, fresh water here. You are the author, the lead author of this bill. Everyone can see it. HR 588. Maybe we'll put up the screen here for folks to see. This is the bill to permanently protect the boundary waters that Congresswoman Betty McCollum has championed. And Congresswoman, maybe you want to describe your bill and talk about what the purpose is and what it would do.
Sure. Well, what the bill does is it says to protect the 234,000 plus acres of federal land and waters from within the Superior National Forest from risky sulfide-ore mining. The bill is supported by local, regional, and national advocate groups working to protect this wilderness area. The legislation solely applies to federal lands and minerals within the Rainy River drainage basin, and that's where the surface waters and groundwaters flow directly into the BWCA. So people like to say like, oh, we're not mining in the BWCA. Well, water's water, and I talked about wetlands before, and if you're mining in a body of water, yes, there might be a political boundary line that goes through it, but the waste and the runoff is not going to stop at that political boundary line. It's going to keep moving through the water. So we know that these mines contaminate the water, they contaminate the air as well, and forest habitat. So the waters of the BWCA and Voyageurs National Park are classified as an outstanding resource, water value under the federal and state law. So it's against the law to degrade that water, period. It's hurting our economy if we allow this mining to go through. So there's all kinds of economic analysis and studies, but let me just give you this. We would lose anywhere between 1,500 jobs to 4,000 jobs. And that's income that's generated into the state, and it's anywhere between 100 million and $900 million in income over 20 years. So if that mining that happens, that always has a leak, that always has a problem, would pollute the water, it would cause injury, and it would also cause loss of property to owners. It would affect livelihoods. So economically, it doesn't make any sense to put these waters at risk for what's happening. So one of the things that my opponent brings up a lot is that this is a national security issue, as I mentioned earlier on the Defense Committee. Yes, copper is very important to our economic security and our national security. But let's get this, make America great again stuff out in the open, but what's really going to happen with what Stauber and with what Trump want to do with their bill. It would allow a foreign-owned company out of Acacia that has, created twin metals to mine money. So we'd be giving to do this mining. So this money that they would be collecting from the leases we sold would be going to a foreign company. Okay. Then the other thing that happens is after they extract what they want out of there, they have to ship it to China. They ship it to China to do the refining before it would come back as copper to the United States. And it's sold on the global market. So everybody's making money at this, and this is not protecting our economic security and our national security. We've all seen what's going on with the tariffs right now. So anything we would import over would go to China. They could sell it on the open market. They could even choose not to sell it back to us. So copper is very important. We have a lot of copper mines here in the United States. We can recycle copper. There's lots of different things we can do. But this is a foolish argument for why we should put these waters at risk.
That's right. The people of Minnesota lose on that deal. This is
The
not
people of the United States lose on that deal because they're national leases. So we care about it here passionately, but we need to treat this like it's the Grand Canyon, folks, or like it's the Sequoia Redwoods, or it's Yellowstone, or it's Acadia. The Everglades. This is a national treasure that we get to host. So we look out for it a little more carefully maybe than some other people do, but it's a national treasure. It's an international treasure. People come from all over the world to experience the wilderness.
Exactly. That bill that Stauber and Trump are promoting, I have it here in my hands, and one part of it prevents judicial review of these decisions. Maybe you want to comment on how important it says right here, a lease or permit issued under this law is not subject to judicial review. I mean, what are your thoughts on cutting the courts out of this?
Well, here's my thoughts. Remember when I said, we have a study moving forward in the 2016 era, and they handed me a redacted report. Well, when environmental groups want, I can't sue the federal government because I'm part of the federal government, right? So when environmental groups want to do something like that's a case in point that they're breaking their bond with members of Congress by not providing information. Why are they hiding the information? Those are things that get brought out in court for the judges to look at. The judge can say, hey, I want to see a copy of that report. We're gonna look at that. This is going to be evidence now. That's what judicial review allows. It allows to bring the sunshine in, to disinfect the nasty stuff that's going on in this administration previously and what's going to go on now.
Yeah, that's right on that. The press and that public scrutiny is that antiseptic, and cleans up bad stuff. And without that, the bad actors are allowed to do what they do without any hindrance. It's a radical. The Stauber bill is radical and un-American. It's just not who we are as people. It's just.
Well, it removes a lot of environmental protections. It fast tracks things. Now, maybe we can look at some of these laws. Maybe we can write them a little differently. But then you sit down and you do it in an open, transparency way, and you bring the scientists in to talk about what's happening. You bring the political leaders in. You bring the environmental community in. This was written for and by the mining companies. So if we're really serious about doing anything any differently, there's ways to do it. This bill that Mr. Stauber has does not do that.
And there's been some positive additional movement on this front. And I know, given what the numbers are in Congress right now, but Senator Tina Smith introduced what's effectively a companion bill to your legislation. And maybe you want to talk a little bit about that, Congresswoman.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to get a Senate leader for a while, and I know Tina has been very interested in doing what she can to protect the boundary waters. She's got her own story, shares, and reasons for doing that. But we both share a passion for public lands and for access to them, and then preserving for future generations the enjoyment of these public lands. So Tina's bill, if you do a side by side, they look a little different. And that's because the Senate has its rules on how it introduces bills, the House has its. So I'm able to put a lot of findings in about the economic situation, about the pristine waters, about the history of it. I can put findings in it. So Tina's bill, if you look at it, doesn't have the findings, but basically we are accomplishing the same goal, and that's to protect these very pristine waters.
Great. There's some questions in the Q&A tab here, but the sort of what's the call to action? What would you have people do, Congresswoman Betty McCollum? There's hundreds of people on the call right now. What's your message to them? What should they do?
Well, if you're, even if you're in the 4th district in the state of Minnesota, writing to me, writing to all your legislators is really important. Writing to the senators about supporting the bill. But the other call to action is think about where you have friends and family. I have a niece in Illinois. I have a great aunt in Florida. My grandfather, before he passed away, lived in Montana. They care about these things too. So helping them or giving them something and explaining to them, like, this is ready to go to email or to send your member of Congress, because this is just not a Minnesota issue. And sometimes when I first had to fight back on some of the things that Representative Stauber was doing early on to increase mining in the boundary waters, I had to I would actually have members of Congress say, well, this is a Minnesota state issue. I'm like, no, it's not. This is a national issue. This is our national public lands. And by the way, these are waters we also share with Canada. So when I get a chance to talk to my parliamentarian brothers and sisters from Canada, I always bring this up. So if you in your travels and that, the Canadians also should be consulted and weighed in on this. They had a sulfur mine leak in Canada, and they saw the results of that. The water flew north, so we didn't see it, firsthand ourselves. We saw the pictures from it, and they know what devastation this could cause.
Right on. So everyone with your network, we'll drop in the chat button here, the link to our call to action where you can tell your friends, go there, and they can plug in their zip code and they can connect immediately with their member of Congress or their U.S. senator and expand that, nationalize this issue. It's going to be thousands of us working those family and personal connections to make this a national movement. And we have seen where people are waking up right now, that people understand that this is a moment in time where we can't be silent. We saw that with the Hands Off rally at the Minnesota State Capitol recently. And there are more events coming up, everyone. And I will kind of maybe in just the upcoming days, or maybe we'll place those just up on there for people to see before Betty McCollum says her some final words here. But there's an event actually tomorrow, everyone, at 4 o'clock. I know it's supposed to rain. That's the weather forecast. So, but that's why we have raincoats. At 4 o'clock at the Science Center there's going to be a rally for public lands. And so we need to stand up to defend our national parks, to defend our public land. So it's really important for us to do that. We have so be there at 4 o'clock at the Science Museum of Minnesota. The second thing, we have our Clean Water Coalition Zoom meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So you can be part of that clean water movement. And then there's an Earth Day event on Saturday at 1 o'clock, the People's Earth Day. So show up for that. And then we have an Earth Day rally ourselves on Earth Day, which is Tuesday, April 22nd. So these are the ways to get it out there, make your voices heard, and have that public profile out there, because we are at a particular moment in time, and the response is that we need to create a movement. We can take this down here, but keep those dates on your calendar. We've placed some things in the chat function for us, and I think people don't have maybe perhaps a full sense of what it's like to be a member of Congress and how much work it is. And so Congresswoman Betty McCollum was first selected in 2000, and she really works every day and back and forth between Washington, D.C. and here. And she has a busy schedule where she's out meeting and listening to people, and she's made time for us in this busy time, and we're incredibly grateful to her. And Congresswoman McCollum, thank you for your time. Do you have some final words for our audience today?
I do. I'm going to give you some homework being a former social studies teacher. So I'm just going to add something to your list here. Okay. So the Park Service is looking at closing the interpretive center that we have at the Science Museum. That's something we're working on. Letters would be very helpful for that. As you know, we not only talk about the BWCAW, Mississippi River, MNRA, the St. Croix, but we also talk about the Great Lakes region parks, and people can learn about parks all over the United States. So our offices, we're kind of figuring out which groups to work with to try to keep that space open. And then I mentioned about, preserving things for the future. So in 1964, the Boundary Waters Canoe area was designated, and it's in the Superior National Forest. And as I said, it's the most visited wilderness area. And doing this, I went and got my Bruce Bento, I don't know, it might be backwards, mug from Bruce, and he says, and the quote on the back is, "Together we make a difference." So we stand on the shoulders of Bruce Bento, and it was bipartisan. Dave Durnberger worked on this and other people as well. But now it's under our watch to protect it. And I'm so pleased to be with friends who want to do exactly that. Protect this water, not only for today, but for tomorrow. Thank you for including me on your bit in your lunch.
Okay. Why, thank you. Thank you for that homework assignment. As a former social studies teacher, you gave us a assignment to act on now. So
Thanks.
thank you, everyone. Thank you, Congresswoman Betty McCollum. We're grateful for what you do for all of us. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much.